1 minute. Yes, we are live then. So let's give it a couple of minutes. Good morning, all of you. Welcome to Giri's Adda. I'm really excited, you know, about what's going to happen today. It's for the first time ever that I think on this very small channel consisting of friends, colleagues, well-wishers, etc., we are doing something live. We're doing a live event on a matter that's very important to all of us. So I'm really happy and grateful that all of you are joining us. We'll just give it another couple of minutes to start, if that's fine with you. Am I audible, Ananya, Harini, Indira?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
Yes.
fine.
lovely.
Very much so.
Great, great. Just a couple of minutes. Yeah. Okay, so let's start. It's, I think, a couple of minutes past 11, and people will anyway join in. So, as I said, first of all, welcome. Very good morning. Sabko suswagat or to Giri's Adda. This is the first event that we're doing on, which we hope will become a series of interactions over a period of time. We've called it Mindful Saturdays. And uh, the reason why we have called it Mindful Saturdays is because we want to discuss about what I have started calling a very ancient art, and my colleagues will correct me on that soon. The ancient art of being mindful, and which is, of course, popularly known as mindfulness. Um I would like to welcome three wonderful people, practitioners of mindfulness, who have agreed to give some of their time and their energy and share their experiences with us. So we're all looking forward to this session with them. So let me begin with Harini. Harini works with, in fact, all of them work in the domain of what we call as social development, social justice, and so on and so forth. Very rich, experienced, accomplished, people. Harini works with a national level organization called as the Center for Learning Resources. It's based in Pune, Maharashtra. She leads across different states many programs for leadership development on early childhood care and development. And she's been doing this for many years. She's also a mindfulness practitioner and counselor. She works with the Just Being Center in Pune. To take forward her interests and practice on mindfulness. Welcome, Harini. Harini is also now being challenged by her 3-year-old daughter, who is challenging probably all her notions of mindfulness and early childhood development in the last 3 years. Sometimes it's
Totally.
easier to do it when you're not a parent. When you're a parent, you face those challenges.
Yeah.
Okay, I move on to my colleague Ananya Goswami. She works with the United Nations Children's Fund in Assam, and I think till today morning she's been nagged by her children, two teenage daughters, who again challenge her notions of being mindful, of being of allowing each moment to unfold slowly, as she says. And thank you very much, Ananya. Uh, she's also she's basically a social policy specialist who's done a lot of work in this area with UNICEF and other organizations. uh, Mindfulness is something that she has been practicing for many years, and as she says, she would love to live life at her own pace and will. I think that's a very sublime goal. She will tell us a lot more about it as we go along. Indira Unni Nair is our third dear friend and colleague who has joined us on this session, and she'll be talking about mindfulness. She is an advocate, she is a lawyer, she practices in Delhi, and she fights for the rights of disadvantaged people. So she is into some really challenging work. And what's interesting, of course, is about Indira is uh, I think she attributes mindfulness. She looks at mindfulness as something that helped her channelize her righteous anger, self-righteous anger, into something that is more inclusive and joyful. So that's a very interesting way of putting it. Uh, why mindfulness? Why did we choose on this particular topic? I think today we are passing through unprecedented times. There are everything that we do, the way we talk, the way we eat, the way we move around, the way we connect with people, everything has been upended in the last 7 to 8 months by this coronavirus. Lot of underlying anxieties, lot of questions about what the future is going to be like, and so on and so forth, have come up in our minds. Many of us probably don't even talk about it. They are there inside of us, pegging away at something or the other. Uh, at the same time, despite all these challenges, these underlying anxieties, I think we also live in a time of opportunity. Let's not forget that. Let's also look at the other side of it. And this is the opportunity that we want to create today by listening to what can we do with ourselves during such times. And of course, the idea of mindfulness and its practice is not just limited to the coronavirus pandemic. It is incidental, of course, that we're talking about it now. But then I'm sure we will find a lot of resonance with what each of our friends are going to tell us as we move along. Uh, we hope as we go along, depending on how this goes, we hope that uh, we will do a series of conversations on mindfulness at Giri's Adda in the coming weeks. And when I say conversations, we just don't want to talk theory. In fact, right starting from today, we want Harini, Ananya, and Indira to help us get into the practice of mindfulness, apart from, of course, understanding what it is and why it is important. So, we would want to do a series of sessions depending on the response that we get. And at the end of which, I hope we will all get onto that wonderful inner journey of transformation. So, without any further ado, let me stop here. And once again, a very, very warm welcome to all of you. I'm sure we're all going to enjoy this session with these three wonderful women who've come on the panel today. Okay, so let's get into the discussion now. So, for me, I mean, I've heard about mindfulness, I've not done it. Maybe I've done it without my knowing it sometimes, right? Uh, a very, very important question that comes to my mind is, and which I would invite Indira to, talk about and uh, give her insights on, is what is it all about? And can you tell us a little about where it actually began? It must have surely begun somewhere. Somebody must have started it. Uh, so just enlighten us a little on this, Indira.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Giri, and thank you, my dear friends, Ananya and Harini, for this wonderful opportunity to traverse this path, to share, and hopefully to give us all an opportunity to learn as well. Uh, I cannot claim to be an authority on the history of mindfulness, but Giri is picky and he wants us to travel that path as well. So I shall do so very
I'm a sucker
mindfully.
for history.
Yes, I understand. So I'm a practitioner, but I did do some research and I would like to share that very briefly among all of us. Yeah. So, to start with, what is mindfulness? To put it very briefly, it is the capacity of being aware of what is going on in the present moment.
Hmm.
Uh, so we are all always mindful of something. You could be mindful of your thoughts, you could be mindful of the blue sky, and your very presence here today. Mindfulness, we can say, is to pay attention to whatever is going on in the present moment
Mm-hmm.
in a particular way, fully and non judgmentally. So you're watching as an observer without being caught and trapped in it. And more on this as we go along. I just wanted to give a little overview
Mm-hmm.
before getting into the history of it.
Right.
Mindfulness can be cultivated through practice, and really that's what we all are. We are practitioners, and we are the practice as well. We hope we are mindfulness as well. We are the embodiment. That's the aim.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh, it's generally accepted that it's from religious and spiritual traditions,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps 4,000 years old from the Indus Valley, and then the Vedic writings 3,500 to 2,500 years ago,
Okay.
to the yeah, and to the Hindu Dharma, which is a way of life, really.
Mm-hmm.
The practice of yoga is also the cultivation of mindfulness, because you're really nurturing the awareness of the body and the mind and trying to get them together,
Mm.
apart from working on the breath.
Okay.
So are
Okay.
Christianity and Islam in terms of awareness of the Holy Spirit, or that Allah is watching. In Buddhist traditions from 2,500 years ago, it became an important part as the very first step towards enlightenment. So, mindfulness can be seen thus in the core of all religions. Today, it's evolved into secular traditions, harnessing various practices uh, of not only being in the present, but also on living a wholesome and joyful life with loving kindness and care towards all living beings. The father of mindfulness is regarded as Thich Nhat Hanh, or
Okay.
Thai, or teacher, uh, who has been teaching mindfulness for over 50 to 60 years. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is also an embodiment of mindfulness, of love, compassion, and teaching the way, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I will say a little more and then I'll hand it over to you, which is that there
Sure.
is a lot of research to show that with the practice of mindfulness, which is constantly trying to be in the present, there can be shifts in our brain
Mm-hmm.
in terms of neuroplasticity
Okay.
within a short period of 8 to 10 weeks,
Oh, okay.
where we feel better, we learn to live better and more joyfully and uh, wholesomely, let me put it that way. So, yeah,
Okay.
thank you for
Lovely.
this opportunity.
No, lovely, lovely. I think you have kind of really provided us such a wonderful overview of the whole thing. And what is exciting or fascinating for me, and I said I'm a sucker for history. It goes probably 3 or 4 thousand years back in time. So this is not something that was invented recently, and marketed for people to come and practice. So this is, and very interestingly, it's also, as you said, it's part of the world's traditions, probably philosophical religious traditions, and one has looked at it in different ways, probably in different traditions. uh, Slight question there about, uh, sometimes, when we talk about meditation, we talk of just emptying the mind and sitting quietly without doing anything. That seems to be a little at odds with this statement that you make about being aware of that moment. I mean, very quickly, how does one reconcile the two?
Is
I
that
mean,
a
in
question for
meditation, you
me?
say you should quieten. Yeah, yeah. To you, Indra. Yes.
Sure. Actually, I don't know whether it's at variance, because in meditation, you're really stilling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are familiar with yoga, then
Mm.
there is this sthiram sukham asanam, which is you still your body, your mind, and your breath also. You really slow it down,
Mm-hmm.
and you become very comfortable. You totally get into a relaxed state, and then you bring yourself into a state of awareness. So,
Right.
meditation is really about that, and about saying that you're emptying the mind. Yes, it's the mind. Our minds are all wandering minds, or that's the nature of the mind. So, what you're trying to do is uh, not let it get caught in the several thoughts, which are also known to be repetitive in nature, and most of them are also known to be quite futile in nature as well. But you're trying to sort of slowly empty your mind of those thoughts and really being in the present to observe as an observer. So that's what meditation is also about, if that's my understanding.
No, no, sure. I think that definitely takes us forward. And also, I like this statement of yours about futile thoughts. So we need to keep that in mind. Okay, so let's take this conversation forward. I want each one of you, uh, maybe starting with Harini, each one of you to share with us all uh, about what is it that mindfulness means to you all. What is it about mindfulness that holds you? What does it, you know, and why is it so important for you? And hopefully, as we hear you, we also get to hear about how you got to it in the first place. Yeah,
Yeah.
Harini, over to you.
Thank you, Giri, and thank you, Indira, for that overview and also the reference to neuroscience, because I think in today's time, we're all skeptical. And it's nice to have that uh, evidence base backing a lot of this. Not that the approach uh, really needs it. It can speak for itself and our experiences talk for themselves. But I've been very fascinated by, especially because of the whole counseling background and all of that, I've been very fascinated by how much all of this is really getting into the practice of getting the right neurons to fire,
Mm-hmm,
because the neurons that fire together wire together, and the understanding that there is a certain way in which the brain is firing in a given moment, which is what makes my entire experience of a moment the way it is, whether I'm angry, happy, fearful, quiet, peaceful. And to come into the awareness of that, to also have that little bit of information playing that this is a set of neurons firing together right now can I
mm-hmm,
just get into a recognition of that in the moment, notice it, and uh, come into a place of stilling, focusing, and getting another set of neurons to fire together. I mean, it's
right.
very oversimplistic, but I think the whole sense of strong identification in the moment, this is what is
Mm-hmm,
happening to me, and this is what I am, and this is how it is, and it should be. All of that really loosens when you really start seeing the brain uh,
mm-hmm,
for itself and the way it is, and the sense that this is what my brain is doing right now. Now, can I just really step back from that, pause,
mm-hmm.
uh, and just start noticing that this is what is happening right now.
Yeah.
And that shift
Mm-hmm,
itself gets a new part of the brain to start kicking into action, which is the cortical brain that we all talk about. And there's a
mm-hmm,
very fascinating neuroscience behind it. And I'm not like the most equipped to talk in detail about it, but it is very fascinating. So I really like the idea that Indira brought uh, it into this conversation.
mm-hmm.
For me personally, I think the journey of practicing uh, is about um, really building a certain kind of relationship with any moment. For all
Mm-hmm.
of us, I think we'll know that there is a certain event that happens to us. It could be outside of me or it could be inside of me. I have a thought, it's too cold today, winter's coming, this is not a good thing, it's going to be too cold this winter, or whatever. It could be an inner or an outer event, and then very quickly we have a certain reaction to it, which is so fused with the event itself that we don't
Mm-hmm.
even see that they are separate. That one is
Mm-hmm.
just a phenomenon occurring. It may be a thought, or it may be something that happens outside of me, someone shouting, or someone falling down, or whatever, or someone coming into the door. And then very quickly, I have a certain reaction to it, which is good, bad, ugly. I like this, I don't like this. This is good, this is not good. This should be like this should not be like this. A whole
Mm-hmm.
reaction, which is a tight set of thoughts and emotions and a physical experience. And for me, the journey has been really about um, arriving into the moment when I begin to see that there is a certain space between the two,
Mm.
that the event and the reaction are not really the same thing. The event is the event, and then my reaction is really a whole set of patterns that I've been living with for all of this
Through
life.
years. Yeah.
It's come from my experiences, what I have seen, heard, felt, learned, believed, all of that from outside. Uh, and the whole solid identity of that whole um, event really begins to loosen up. And for me personally, I think the practice of mindfulness really is about being able to still your mind enough so that you can really notice something in real
Mm-hmm.
time. So the sitting practices, the formal practice for me have really been just that sense of training my mind to really
Mm-hmm.
notice something, because the mind is constantly in that, like Andira was saying, it's there is that whirlwind going on all the time.
Right.
And then there is the world, there's the life that also takes place around the formal practice, which is all of life. And then in that all of life, being able to build that little space between an event and my reaction. I think for me, that's very, very valuable today,
Mm.
because
Mm-hmm.
we begin, then it's so possible to begin seeing, and as I see that more and more in small things in small ways, there's profound freedom in that, that the way I perceive something, what I think, believe, or experience about something is not the absolute solid reality, and there is this
Mm.
whole space that
Mm.
in which a whole set of possibilities can come in, and also the sense that as that space increases, because as the capacity to hold on to noticing whatever is occurring inside me, there is that sense of space increasing, and very
Mm-hmm.
often we see that the event and my reaction, they have also dissolved in the moment, and
Mm.
that this moment wasn't about me and that event. This moment is
Right.
full in itself. It's free, it's spacious, and it's a lot else. And that is what a lot of psychology will say is being able to witness something from an unconditioned or a less conditioned place. And for me, that, if I can just keep practicing that, is enough for me. Mindfulness and the whole spiritual aspect of it has a lot more beyond that. But for me, I think it has been a valuable thing, because life's full of ups and downs. And you asked how I got into it. It was really accidental. I had this time when I had a miscarriage, but the 1 month before the miscarriage, I was in bed, a lot of pain and fear and anxiety and all the usual things. And a book called When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron it happened to be near me. And it was just something I had bought as a part of my spiritual window shopping. I hadn't really meant
Mm-hmm.
to read it with
Mm.
the kind of engagement that I finally did, because I was lying in bed reading. But it really felt like Pema took me by my little finger and led me through that whole
Mm-hmm.
experience, just breathing into the moment to moment, with every spasm, every fearful thought, every anxious thought, every thought of, oh my God, now I'm going to lose this. Um, and what I do know is that when I moved, when the event was over and I kind of came out of it, I was unscarred. And
Wow.
that was possible because it was possible to stay with it. Not that it was not a difficult time, but it was possible to to notice a lot of the reactions that were coming up and let them go in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
which means that perhaps that pattern wasn't getting so intensified in my brain, as Indira referred to, as it would have had Pema not come to my help. So, and I would have probably come out of that event feeling so pitiful about me or something which can happen to us
Bitter,
all the
bitter
time.
about
We are
it.
full of
Yes.
these images of ourselves, either
Yeah.
inflated or deflated, right?
Yeah.
So that event came, it came with its struggles and it left. And when it left, it
Mm.
had left. There wasn't residue.
Wow.
So that
Wow.
was my
Okay.
entry, I would say. And from then on, to be able to just witness so that I'm able to honor what arises within me, but also not get caught in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like really, really striking that balance and mostly not managing to strike it very well. But
Mm-hmm.
still, in that effort, that's what for me
Right.
mindfulness is about.
Wow. Thank you so much, Harini. I think you've mentioned so many things, and we are going to be getting back to some of these. And thank you for sharing that story from your own life. The very fascinating thing is about what happens in the brain. So there is a very deep connection between the actual biology of it and what we probably call as what happens in the mind. And we must, talk a little about that. Also, this whole issue of matter of noticing something and not being carried away by it and just seeing it as it comes and perhaps goes, as you have also said. I think that's trying to notice itself is something that there are a couple of questions already which I am putting in front of all of you, not for reflection right now, but that keeping in mind. So one is, Pooja says, Pooja Bajad says, thanks, Harini. I see myself in such binaries when I hear others talk about it. It's almost as if they're talking about someone I don't know altogether. Gargi, one of my colleagues, has also asked this question. I actually wonder if we can ever empty the mind. Does that happen with practice? And I think that's a question that we'll have to come to at a later stage. There's also a request by Parul for some bit of Hindi talking. I don't know how much we will be able to do that, but then we can certainly try, because she says that there are a lot of people, friends of hers, who would be more comfortable with Hindi. So that's a request that I will place in front of the panel कि जितना हिंदी में बात कर सकते हैं करिए, but then don't be constrained by language. Slip back into any language that you feel comfortable with. So, can we now move on to the same personal sharing from you, Ananya? What does it hold for you, mindfulness? How did you get there?
Mm. First of all, thank you, Giri, for quite a bit nagging me. So you talked about my children nagging me. You nagged me
Oh
quite a
yes,
bit to
yes,
be
yes,
part
yes,
of this
yes. And I'm happy that I nagged you for it. Yeah.
conversation. And thanks to Indira and Harini, they have actually spoken a lot and about what this practice is all about. And if I look at my life, I think this practice is the
Mm-hmm.
fulcrum of my life. So it's a way of my life, it is what we call kingpin, no? It's the pin on which my life revolves around. And it's been extremely joyful. It's been real fun
Mm-hmm.
to be into this practice. um, and all of what mindfulness Indira spoke about and subsequently Harini spoke about, all of that applies. It's basically able to kind of coming back to your breath and the question that Gargi put. Yes, it's
Mm-hmm.
possible. I mean, it needs a lot of practice because you have to change your neuron pathways. If you look at it from a neuroscience perspective, it needs
Mm-hmm.
practice. So it really needs some degree of self discipline. But I feel that possibly there are times in our own lives when we come at a point, and when we feel that ye aur nahi chal sakta hai, you know. So about 11 to 12 years back, I was at that point. I used to be a bundle of nerves, literally, and a cocktail mix, you know. You put vodka, tomato juice, everything. So that was all I was, you know.
I think a lot
I
of us
had
are. Yeah.
I had lots of insecurity about everything in my life. Job insecurity, performance in my work insecurity, insecurity about my family, so many things, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fear on one side. The other side, there was a constant rush, a
Mm.
constant busyness, and
Mm.
as if moving from one thing to the other, you know. So even if it was say it's a weekend, or it's a long weekend, so even before the weekend has arrived, the thought is
Mm-hmm.
already there, what am I going to do on that weekend, and hectic planning around that weekend. And then, you know, as the weekend passes by, coming back and feeling, oh, I'm so exhausted with all the traveling possibly I have done with my family or friends or whatever it might be. So there was no kind of pausing in a way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And small things would trigger me like this. So it's my 3 year. I still recall this event. My 3 year old daughter, she one day refused to go to her play school, and I made such a big issue of it. And now at times she tells me, you know, now you don't bother if I'm not studying as well. You say let it be, you know. So that's possibly a barometer where I can see myself. So you know, it was just that I was a bundle of nerves, and it led to a lot of health issues. So I got what is called hypertension. It was a kind of what they call resistant BP. So with
Oh, okay.
medicine, that would not come down.
So it's not going.
So I
Mm.
would, yeah. I was on high on meds. My diet was very lean in that sense. So I wasn't consuming a lot of fat or whatever. I used to go for walks, but very high resistant BP. So it always, even with medicines, it would be in the range of 150, 100. And that's when I was 36, 37 years old. And there was a lot of fear of sickness and death with that, you know, because I had very
Mm.
young children. One was 5 years, the other was just born and was 1 year or something. So I would always imagine something that Indira and Harini pointed out: the brain, it's constantly making up stuff for you. So I would always think that, oh,
Mm.
kal to mere ko brain stroke ho jayega, and I would read up, like, you know, ignore, like, you know, we are half literates, no, so I'm not a doctor, so I would read up in the Google. And then, you know, I still recall so much that I would always think that, oh, I might have a brain stroke, oh, what will happen if I'm paralyzed, oh, what will happen to my kids, oh, how will the family go, and so on and so forth. Around those times, I actually came across Thich Nhat Hanh's book, to whom Indira referred to. And that book was called Living Buddha, Living Christ. That was sometime in 2008. And what struck me in that book, what he talks about, something that has stayed on, is that he
Mm-hmm.
says, breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing
Mm.
out, I know I'm breathing out. Breathing in, I know this is a present moment, and this is a wonderful moment. It was a door opening up for me.
Mm.
So it
Mm.
just made me realize that if I could, and I did it myself. So when I started at least trying to work with it, I saw, even if it was momentarily, that chatter in my head would come down. I could
Mm.
really feel that. And like they have spoken about, you know, the moment you are able to still your mind to some extent, or bring a bit of a pause, your body starts relaxing. So there is
Right.
such a strong connect between your mind and body, and I could feel that in me. And over time, and you know, and as I spoke about these times, I also had a lot of sleep disorders. I could not sleep
Mm.
very well. and say, even if I thought I slept well, I would get up not feeling very fresh, and I had lots of nightmares.
Mm.
So half of the night probably I'm in my nightmares, and terrifying nightmares. I would see lots of stuff. But and around again that time, I think it was around 2009 or something, I came across, in fact I picked it up because when in 2007 8 when I read his book Living Buddha Living Christ, it was a book I had picked up from my office library. Then I was working with Catholic Relief Services and they had it in the library, and I had picked it up and I started practicing at least some bit of it, not so much like right now as I speak to you, that it is the fulcrum of my life. It wasn't so much deeply embedded, but I started working on it. And in 2010, I remember picking up a book of his called Teachings on Love, and I picked it up from the Full
Hmm.
Circle market, Full Circle shop that we many of us are familiar with
Yes,
in
the
Delhi.
favorite shop in Khan Market, which is now unfortunately
Yeah,
closed. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but I think they're opening up in Meherchand. I hear that. And they had a
Mm.
counter in GK1. So that was close to my office. So one day, possibly, I must have gone for a cup of coffee and browsed through the books and picked up that. And interestingly, in that book, he writes about the loving meditation, which is called metta meditation or loving kindness, like Indira spoke about. And in that he says, or it's Buddha who said that people who practice this meditation, they tend to sleep better. And it struck me because I had that problem, right? I couldn't sleep well. And then the next one, if I remember correctly, it said, oh, you have less nightmares. I was like, bang on, there you go. And that's how it started a lot. I started some of Thai's, practices of walking meditation. So I was walking earlier on, but there was a difference in the way I was walking now. And I remember walking on the DDA parks in Delhi, and I could feel a chest in on my chest, a huge boulder. I could literally feel it. And that was the first time possibly I went back to my body in a way.
Hmm.
And as I started doing more of that walking meditation, I felt that boulder lifting off.
Oh
And
boy.
like
Wow.
Harini says, it's such freedom.
Wow.
So
Wow.
now when I look at my life, I mean, it's so joyful. Not to say I don't have my sufferings. I have a lot of anxiety even now. I at times still now I get a lot stressed. But then I know, and Thai says it very nicely. He says that you learn how to suffer. So that's so
Right.
wonderful. And then as you learn how to suffer, you suffer less. So you basically use your suffering as a compost, he says, and that compost is so much necessary for the flowers
Mm.
to bloom. So you have
Mm.
both
Mm.
sides to it. And I feel that's where my life is right now. That's how it looks like. Every moment unfolds very slowly. I allow it to flow, not so much caught in the turbulence of all kinds of things that may happen either at the family front, with friends, or at work, but being able to create that space between that event and myself. And I feel that that's just practice, practice, and practice. That's where it takes you. That's all.
Wow. Wow. No, no, no. Wonderful. I think this is such a, I mean, you've shared so much of both of you, Harini and Ananya, you've shared so much of yourself and let us all in on those, stories and experiences. I'm really grateful. And it's not easy to be doing that. I think there are several things that you have also said, Ananya. You've brought about this connect between the mind and body. It's something I wish I have the time today to explore that with you. You're talking about uh, pausing, and I think that's something that Harini alluded to, and we are going to get to a pause pretty quickly. I'm really excited about that. Meanwhile, there are some questions that come in. So there are two questions which I will post to you, but I just want to bring it up over here. Priyanka is asking, pushing away the thoughts and be in a thoughtless state. Is that mindfulness? Being in a thoughtless state, pushing away all your thoughts, whether they come or but they keep coming back. So what do you do about that? That's a question. And then Gargi asks a question about what is the difference between mindfulness and heartfulness, because that's something that we're beginning to hear now, right? Is this another whole different paradigm? So those are the two questions that we will need to keep for the future of the session. Sleep disorders, how many of us, I mean, I can associate with that. How many of us have are failing in our sleep every day? So I'm really happy that you brought that up, and I think what's heartening is that you've overcome it so beautifully, and there must be something in it for us all to learn. Indira, what does it hold for you? What does it mean for you, and what is your journey? And of course, I find it very fascinating that you managed to I'm sure you're still rebellious somewhere, probably in a mindful way, and probably not in such an angry manner. So tell us about your experiences.
Sure. Uh, yeah, for me, the way mindfulness has impacted me has been by really making me live life more fully, if I can put it that way. I feel far more alive moment to moment. I used to feel very pulled apart, like Ananya was saying. You wait for something, you wait for a moment, you plan with so much of anticipation. But when that moment comes, you're either caught in the past or in the future, or you're
Mm,
scattered at that time. So I find that instead of that, I feel more put together today and really being able to be in
mm,
the now, so to speak. So that's one way it's impacted me hugely. Uh, Having said that, I will say that I was always mindful in a certain sense because I was steeped in certain practices which are mindful in a way. For instance, I always loved music. And music is mindful. I think all of us would agree. You're totally in the moment, you're totally with it. I always loved to read, and I loved to sketch and draw, and I just loved to be as well. I've
mm,
always had a lazy bone in me, which was just to be, not necessarily do things, but just be there. However, I used to at the same time be very intolerant of unmindfulness. So, really, I didn't know how to manage or even handle my feelings and
mm,
my expectations. So, for instance, when I was young, and when I used to, I mean, I'm no longer not young, but when I was much younger and I used to exercise, I used to exercise with great intensity because whatever I did, I used to do with intensity. But today I will say I do it fully, but with less obsessiveness and intensity. So I'm still doing it fully,
mhm,
but I'm not clutching in that way. But when I used to do that, my younger sister used to come and prod me at that time, knowing that I would fly off the handle. So that was an example of being intolerant of unmindfulness. So, that
mm,
was one of the
mm, mm.
examples.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I also didn't know how to manage or handle my feelings and expectations in the sense that if something deviated from what I expected, especially with my close relations, my family, I felt sort of devastated. So it was that, I was so betrayed because they didn't understand what I really wanted and therefore they don't care for me. So this went on for a very long time actually. This was not only for me as a child, but much longer. So I think I've really shifted a lot from that to understand that we all have our own seeds and our own way of looking at things. And just because somebody doesn't necessarily do things the way you're looking at, the way they ought to be doing things, it need not be that they don't care for you and they've sort of abandoned you. So that was that. And most important, I've been able to nurture my relationship with myself much better. I
Mhm,
think somewhere I was caught more in the external, and in a way, I've become my own soulmate in a much better way. Uh, I'm able to see what my needs are better. I'm able to fulfill them better. I'm also able to give of myself in a more compassionate way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I used to do things for people, canceling myself, so to speak. And that used to bother me later because then my expectations were not fulfilled as well.
Right.
So that's also shifted a lot because I do take care of myself first. But at the same time, I'm also very happy to take care of other people because I have a tendency of doing to do that. But I'm able to do that in a very balanced way, I would say,
Mm.
so that I'm not torn. Because in the profession that I am in, and also as a personality, uh, I do function a little like that, or more than a little like that, and I'm able to sort that out. So, for instance, at work, I would, burn the midnight oil, and I used to very, facetiously say, "Oh, I always used to be a fowl," which means I was an early riser, but now I've also become an owl. So, I thought it was quite cool to be that way. And I just used to sleep 4 hours a day for decades together, and it sort of really spoiled my health. I didn't realize that that was impacting my health. And so, I was not even in touch with my body and what it needed adequately. Although I used to practice martial arts and later on yoga as well. But all that has become far deeper so that I'm more in connection with my body and myself. So I think that is a very big shift for me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, so that, now as far as the rage part is concerned, I was saying that I had this feeling of outrage, and I also took up a profession somewhat later in life, after almost 2 decades of market research, 1.5 decades of market research and business consultancy. I took up law, and it was more to contribute to the field of governance, and also to represent vulnerable groups like the urban poor, the rickshaw pullers, street vendors,
Right.
people without shelter, battered women. And I was not getting much support from what I used to term as the opposite side, which was the state, the government, and
Mm-hmm.
also the courts, because we very often there is a certain perspective that people take towards such issues, and I felt that I was not understood adequately, and I used to again feel really this sense of righteous rage that how can people do this to other human beings? How can they not feel compassion? How can they not uphold the law? And on top of everything, how can government bodies perpetrate it and then take a stance in court which is so unsympathetic, and then how can the court also not listen? So it was, again, I realized it was a lot about me and the way I wanted to project things. I would still say that I feel that these causes are very important, but now I look at them differently in the sense that I see that you can present these by also trying to understand where the other person is coming from and try to nurture the better seeds in them, the seeds of compassion and kindness, and also the law-abiding nature, so to speak, because there is a lot of fear in government authorities. They come from a sense of fear. We
Mm.
have unfortunately embraced our colonial laws and mindsets, so we need to also understand with compassion that people who are steeped and nurtured in that are not quite so lucky. So instead
Mm.
of blaming them, I can also see that they come from that space, and I'm able to collaborate more with them rather than just try to put them down in a very unsympathetic manner.
Mm.
So not that I'm saying that I condone this manner any, but I don't put down the person, but I try to focus on the conduct and
Right.
work on that with more patience, but more patience by looking at the whole thing in a sort of a shifted way. Also, by taking care of myself and not burning the midnight oil at both ends. So
Mm.
therefore, I'm able to come back with more nourishment and to bring in hope to the whole case, so to speak,
Mm.
to people from the government, and not look at them always as the other side and the
Right.
enemy, and therefore to try to bring some shifts so that we work together. I've seen a huge difference. As a result, it's not that it overnight they say, oh yeah, you're right, or anything like that, but there is definitely a reaching forward to listen more carefully. I think that makes a
Mm.
difference.
Mm.
There is definitely, over a period of time, an attempt to try and do things which are more congenial and supportive uh, of the situation, and the situation, not the in a wrong sense, but the to correct the situation rather.
Right.
So these are some of the big differences that I've seen in my other work front. As far as
Right.
relationships are concerned, uh, I find myself being less judgmental, and I think I might
Mm-hmm.
have been far more judgmental of myself as well. They say that the more judgmental you are of yourself, the more you tend to judge others.
Mm.
So I have the freedom today, I feel, to choose how I respond to a situation and also to people. So it is
Mm.
that space that Ananya and Harini were talking about. And I have some favorites in my practice. One is, that in every moment, you can be fresh as a flower, which is that each moment presents you with infinite possibilities, the possibilities of opportunity to be fresh and to look at them anew and to really
Mm-hmm.
invent them anew. So that's how I look at that. We also have this meditation of solid as a mountain, which is,
Mm-hmm.
you're still. So when something happens, it's not that you rush in and you necessarily need to react. So if there is an instance which may take place, which is either positive or negative in your mind, you can still pause to observe. And I'm opening the queue to pause as well soon.
Mm-hmm.
So to pause and not necessarily rush in. So this term achal, which is also the synonym for mountain in Hindi and Sanskrit, we
Mm-hmm.
know is not to really quickly react, but really to reflect and see what the moment presents and what we really want to do with that moment. Maybe you don't need to do anything at that time. So you don't
Right.
need to feel
Right.
that insecurity that you have to rush and do something
And do
just to make
something.
a
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then there is still water reflecting, which is, when you have a beaker or you have muddy water, then it's really turbid.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep it still, you would have noticed that the mud settles down and there is crystal clarity in the water. So your mind, if it's still, your body, if it's still, then your mind also gets still. And you can see things with much greater clarity and peace. Now, still
Right.
water reflecting, the lovely visualization that I like is also when there is a lake, and if you visualize a palm tree, then you can see the reflection clearly if that water is still. But if it is not, and if there are ripples, you cannot see that reflection
Wow. That's
clearly.
a very beautiful analogy. Yes. Wow. Wonderful.
So if you
Okay.
see things as they are, uh,
Mm.
if somebody doesn't see you or notice you, it is not necessarily that they're deliberately ignoring you. Maybe they have something on their minds. So to
Yeah.
just see things as they are and then try
Right.
to understand them and not necessarily react. So be like the mountain and see that this moment is full of possibilities. Also leads me to the last visualization, which I love, which is space, the freedom and the vastness of space, the sky, where you have the option to not necessarily be trapped in reacting in your time worn and habituated energies. We tend to we tend to perhaps flare up if something happens because it touches an old seed of ours. So there's something that happens and the person is reacting, this is behaving in a particular way, which has
Mm-hmm.
always been the case. Then we tend to flare up like that. But then you also have the freedom to sort of release yourself from being entrapped in that maybe a little cage and be in the vast expanse of the sky to choose how you are. So I also
Okay.
like that kind of visualization. And
Lovely.
so this
Yeah.
is just a little bit about how it's helped me. And just last but not the least, it's helped me a lot in terms of my health. Mindful eating, the freedom to choose
Wow.
how,
Yeah.
what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, which is really eating slowly and in the moment, appreciating every morsel. It has helped me a lot, and I've also shed a lot of physical as well
Hmm.
as emotional weight. And today, I'm a much happier person health wise as well. So, yeah, I just thought I
Lovely.
would share
Lovely.
some of
Thanks.
that.
Thanks a lot, Indira, for that. I mean, it's not only is it exhaustive, I think it's very, very deep, and I don't even have the courage to go back and recollect everything that you have said. Uh, but some of the things that come to mind is this very interesting thing that you pointed out about music, reading, or any activity which is done fully and immersively being a mindful experience in itself. I think that gives us a lot of clues about what we can do. It's definitely not probably just stilling the mind in terms of pushing away those thoughts and trying to be desperately sitting quietly. I don't think it is that. And I was, fascinated by this whole thing of relating with myself and being my own soulmate. And I think we will probably explore some of that. Uh, Now, I would want Indira to actually, and in fact, all of you at different points have talked about the pause. So this is very fascinating. What is this pause all about? You've given it different names. You've talked about stillness, you've talked about pause, and standing apart, and so on and so forth. Can you actually help us do this in this session today, Indira? Can you help us to pause and
Pause
experience
and experience
what that could mean?
what that means.
Yes, I will try. I have a bell. So here I'd like to just talk briefly about a wonderful collective sangha that we have. Both Ananya and I belong to that, and we've been introduced to what is called the bell of mindfulness. And the sangha is also very supportive and holds us together, as do our family and our close relations. Now, and it's also taught us a way to love and be loved and to be held. It also it also has introduced us to this bell, where I have one version of it, but
Hmm.
it's simply a reminder to come back to the present, to come back to our breath, and just be. So when we invite this bell, the sound of the bell, we can just simply sit and be and just try to see how we feel about this. And then I'm sure my friends Harini and Ananya will talk a little more about it. I will just try to practice. So let's try to take maybe 2 or 3 minutes to just sit and be absolutely relaxed and chillaxed, which is my favorite term.
Sure. Requesting everyone who is tuned in on this session to just do what Indira says and experience that. Yeah. Go on, Indira. Thank you.
So if you like, you can close your eyes and just listen to the sound of the bell. We can stop whatever we're doing, but in a very relaxed way. Just sitting, aware that this moment is simply for us, in silence. You can slowly come out of your short moment of pause, this brief moment of silence, and I'll hand over back to Giri.
Thank you so much, Indira. In fact, I think, to be honest, that also helps in quietening that chatter. I think, which is something that is very important for us. In fact, there's an instant response on the chat by Shreyas Vyas from Gujarat. He says, I'm also facing a sleeping disorder, although I'm known to be a very cool person. Don't know why. So there is an apparent paradox there. He's cool, doesn't get agitated, but he still faces a sleep disorder. So some of these, um, Ananya and Harini, do you want to weigh in on this a little briefly before we open up? I think we should now also open up to questions that people may have.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Ananya, you
Harini.
want to go?
Okay. So you want us to speak a bit
Pause.
about
Yeah, very
pause,
briefly
or you
about
want to
pause, and in fact,
reflect
we
on?
will take up
Yeah.
this more as we go along. But for today, just a quick set of thoughts or observations from your side.
So possibly I'll talk about a bit about my practice, and what it means in terms of pause. Um, I feel that the moment I could get into um, the walking meditation, and this is one of the important practices in the tradition that Indira and I follow, the Plum Village tradition, which has been founded
Mm-hmm.
by Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. Um, and the walking meditation is basically simply becoming aware of your breath and putting your step on the ground. I have found that to shift a lot of things in me. First of all, when you kind of become aware of your breath and you then, put your feet on the ground, you are, by its very nature, you are pausing
Mm-hmm.
actually. Without that pause, I mean, if so, what happens is that, constantly we are in our head, right? We are
Mm-hmm.
thinking, it's a thinking mind. So you actually bring down that energy, that this that there's so many, and it gets out of your body. In a way, I feel that way for myself. I feel that the moment, I'm able to do the walking meditation, so I just become aware of my breath and I put my step, I slow down. And in that slowing down, there
Right.
is a pause. And that pause has helped me to see lots of things around me. Say, for example, in the morning when I'm awake and I go and open my front veranda door, the very act of looking at those plants that I have gives
Mm-hmm.
me a sense of pause. It just helps me to see,
Right.
lovely, look at this. And I just become somewhere, the thoughts disappear and one becomes one with that particular, with that feeling of that tree. I really enjoy seeing the fluttering of leaves
Right.
when there is a slight breeze, and it flutters things in me in a very joyful way. And that's something I really love about pausing. And there are many practices, simple things to be done. Why I'm sharing that, because possibly the audience might also be wanting to have something. We have a very simple practice of opening the
Mm-hmm.
door, and that's something that I talked about. And in India, we both are part of what Indira talked about, our sangha, which holds us so much together. So we have our teacher, who is an ordained teacher in the Plum Village tradition, Shantam said. And Shantam has often talked about this practice, and he talks about it in a very gentle and kind way. So it's about simply becoming aware of turning the knob or the handle, the door handle. So the moment you, if you are aware, and the moment you turn the door handle, you are aware of the cold metal that touches your hand,
Right. Right.
right? And if you can pause there and come back
Mm-hmm.
to your breath, you are literally knowing that you're opening the door. So
Mm-hmm.
that pause there, coming back to your breath, opening the door, at least is breaking that cycle of thinking in you. And I
Right.
have found it a beautiful practice to do, particularly after a full day of work when you might have so many things happening. As you walk up the stairs, you walk up the stairs mindfully, so that's another pause. And then when you open the door or the handle and you are aware of doing it, you over time, as you practice it, you actually leave back that all
Yeah.
that has
Yeah.
happened in your office front, and you
Yeah.
come back fresh as a flower to your
Mm-hmm.
home, to your loved ones, so you really make a transition in that sense. So that's, I think, briefly just to talk about how I look at pause, or how I try to practice it in my day to day life. I feel mindfulness is not something esoteric. It's not something that you do once a day, or it's not some meditation or anything. I mean, we kind of do practices, sitting practices, to deepen it, but it's how you actually live moment by moment that changes the quality of your life. And I think that's where the key is,
Right.
on
Lovely.
how you live it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that answers Priyanka Sethi's question, which is uh, it is possible to pause briefly for a while when we close our eyes. However, can one practice it during the day and our wakeful hours? And I think you've very beautifully illustrated a number of examples, right from what may seem very mundane, as opening the door with the knob, to climbing up the stairs, and so on and so forth. I think just being in that movement, savoring it, even if it's pain, perhaps experiencing it, looking at it, and so on. So more of this as we go along. Harini, very quickly, would you like to weigh in on this
Yeah, sure.
before we take some questions from our friends? And also, there are already some questions that are being asked, so I would like to pose them to you.
Yeah, I think everything important about the pause has been said, and I want to just endorse that a lot of what we think is happening to us is really our own reaction to what is going on. And the pause is about very gently just coming in for that reaction to not completely take the moment off from our hands. So our mind is constantly judging, reacting, praising. It's that faculty is there. And our pleasure and suffering is really about what our mind is doing by way of that thinking, judging. And all that a pause is doing is like in the moment, I'm
Mm,
going to step back and see what is going on. And
mm,
what mostly as we practice, we see is okay, now here is what is going on around me, and
yeah,
here is how I am reacting to it. This is what
right,
my mind is thinking. He's
right,
like this, she's like that. I want this, I don't like this. And noticing that.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
not even sure about a thoughtless state, but
mm,
I am
mm,
sure about a state in which it's possible to notice thoughts. And that is what we
mm.
can practice. A
Very
stillness of
beautifully put.
another
Yeah.
kind comes, and that chooses to come. We cannot, I don't think we can create that, but what we
Mm,
can do is simply cultivate the practice of noticing what is happening and how is our mind reacting to whatever is happening, which might
mm,
even include my mind reacting to my own reactions. I'm feeling angry, but now I should not feel angry.
right, right,
It's
right.
and that's what we do, and no wonder Indira talked about that profound journey, because simply just that practice of being able to notice what is going on in that anger is somehow somewhere capable of bringing you in touch with, okay, what is it that is really needed here? Yeah,
Mm,
at the core of it, maybe there is a very beautiful need to do good.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
even the source of that anger is not actually ill.
mm,
It's
mm,
it's not it's not it's not something negative. Reactions are coming, and all our reactions are our habits and our patterns. And if we are
mm.
able to notice our reactions to whatever is going on, recognizing that this is a reaction, and then again there's a reaction to my reaction, and we notice that slowly there is a possibility of being able to just allow something has a possibility to completely open up. It's like that moment, and that moment I cannot
Releasing that, yeah,
design. Yeah, I
yeah,
cannot design that moment, but it'll choose its time and come because
right,
I am waiting. And the
right.
pause is about waiting.
Wow,
Like,
wow,
don't let me
wonderful.
run with this reaction. Let me just let it come. It's okay. I'm going to wait with it.
Right,
And
right.
and what we very often nowadays call befriending ourselves, and the whole compassionate journey that Ananya and Indira have talked about. It's really about befriending our reactions. If the idea was again to hack the anger out of us, we would not be able to then move into the state where I feel better.
Befriending our reactions. Wow, very beautifully said. And also sits in so well with what Indira's talked about, nurturing my relationship with myself. Ananya mentioned it too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the reactions are like layers of onions. It, behind a reaction, there's another reaction, and then there's another reaction because we've internalized so many shoulds about how life should be and how we should be and how everyone around us should be. So there's always something. This is good. This is not good, and just simply see, huh? Now this is what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. Um, I think Harini, we have lost you for a moment.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I think while she gets connected, uh, couple of questions. One is a very simple. I'm just opening up this whole discussion, this fascinating discussion, to our friends who have tuned in. Atifa is first of all asking a very simple question. Sorry, Arini, we lost you for a moment. I'm just opening this up,
Please
this
move on. Yeah.
discussion up. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. So Atifa's question to Indira specifically is: the bowl that you had in your hand, is it a Himalayan bowl or is it a Tibetan bowl? What is it? I mean, she's very curious to know about that bowl of yours. You can probably show it again.
Yes, yes. Uh, so some of my friends have really been very selective about the bell that they have procured. I happened to go to Darjeeling many years ago, and I collected one from there. So I'm not aware about the differences. For me, it is a bell of mindfulness. Uh, it might be a Tibetan bowl, but I'm not aware. I'm sorry, but I can find out and let you know. But
That'd
it's
be nice.
from
Yeah,
the, yeah, yeah, I'll find out for sure.
great. Some questions that have already been asked. I'm also looking forward to more questions coming in. But this distinction between, uh, I mean, in fact, in my little library at home, I have John Kabat-Zinn on mindfulness. There's a lovely book which I've been reading, trying to understand. There's also a book that I've picked up on heartfulness, which I'm yet to read. So, can you help us understand, if at all, there's a distinction between these two? What is that distinction, or are they all two sides of the same coin? I know this is something we have called this session a mindful Saturday. We could as well probably be calling it a heartful Saturday as well. So over to you. I mean, who wants to take that? Who wants to bell that, hit that bowl again?
Um,
Harini, you wanted to say something?
no, I'm just wondering, honestly, and I don't know if there is a difference because I think that a mindful moment is a very heartful moment
Hmm.
because I think what we're talking about at the core of being mindful or heartful is to be with something without judgment and with a certain kind of compassionate acceptance.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I think that's really the crux to my mind. And
So probably
such,
this distinction does not even, I mean, does not even
I mean,
matter
I
there.
don't know if
What
there
you
is
call
in
it.
terms of
Yeah.
the in terms of the vocabulary and what people have written about. But to
Right.
me, I think when I am able to be with something fully,
Mm-hmm.
I know in my body, my mind feels free, my body feels spacious, my heart feels like it's expanded up to the,
Right.
to as much as it can take in.
Right. Right.
And there is an experience of deep harmony with all
Mm-hmm.
that there is, including what otherwise I would feel very conflicted about.
Mm-hmm.
People who I don't like, people who I like, all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think and we all experience such moments of being in harmony with things, with events, with life in deeper and not so deep ways.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think the two go together. I think when Pema talks of it, she really comes to it from a heart space. There's the whole metta practice, and all of it is a real, but it's mindful, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's about bringing attention, which is a cognitive aspect, and a quality of attention, which is the feeling aspect, which is
Mm-hmm.
non-judgmental and compassionate, and really the marriage of the two. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I love the way Indira put it. I feel more put together. I mean, my heart and my mind, and they're not like different things, and my body, and it's all one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's all working together because I'm not conflicted in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know. I think it's like this, but I don't know because I don't claim to have read about what heartfulness and mindfulness have to say in
About each
detail.
other. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, or about
Uh,
themselves also. I mean,
about themselves as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much being said and written about people are studying, practicing so much that I'm kind of, I don't know.
Sure.
But I'm
Sure.
wondering what Ananya and Indira are
Yeah.
thinking.
So let's ask them. Any thoughts on this, Ananya and Indira?
Yes, I'd like to step in. I endorse completely what Harini says, and I'm not going to repeat myself, therefore, except that I just want to add that there is an understanding of things at an intellectual level, and there is
Mm,
also the practice and the feeling of those things or those practices, and really embodying them. So I
mm.
would just add
The
there by saying
experiencing
that
of that. Yeah.
it's the,
Mm,
yeah, absolutely, the experiential aspects, and also it's not just head upwards. So there's you can know that there is the heartfulness, you can know about mindfulness, but then there is actually the feeling, let's say neck downwards, and really the belief and the embracing of that and being of that. So I would say that for me is what mindfulness and heartfulness are. And
mhm,
mindfulness is not about mind, full, but just
mhm,
mindful as in being in the present. And
mm.
the heartfulness is
Yeah,
really
it's
the
anything but
capacity.
mindful, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the heartfulness part is then because you're so much in sync, so to speak, then it's your widened or deepened capacity to really have compassion for yourself
Right.
and for others.
Yeah,
So
beautifully put. Yeah, yeah.
yes, I would just add to
Lovely,
that. Yeah.
lovely, lovely. Ananya, any thoughts on this heartfulness, mindfulness thing?
I
That's a
think
question that has come up.
Harini,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Harini and Indira spoke about it. I mean, they've actually explained it the way I also see it. And like you also added, I feel, for example, I may say I'm happy, and
Mm-hmm.
that might be a thought in my head, because I've conjured up images of happiness about myself, or images, but the direct experiencing of it is what is finally happiness is all about. I'm just taking that as an example. So when I
Right.
look at heartfulness and mindfulness, I'm not sure, possibly there may be differences in approaches. I'm not sure from where this question, I mean, from which lens this question has been asked. But if you ask me, I would say I have looked at myself as embracing all which is within me. So there are
Mm-hmm.
certain things which I feel are positive or wholesome seeds, as we call it in our tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some unwholesome seeds as well, and I'm aware of that. So it's about embracing them and not really being judgmental about them. So
Mm-hmm.
I know I struggle in some cases a lot, and I'm aware of that struggle. But it's not that I'm pushing down that struggle, or I'm saying, yeah, Ananya, you're so bad, so bad, so bad. Why you keep doing something which I was doing, say, 10 years back, but I don't do it right now anymore. I know, yes, I'm
Right.
struggling. I will not gloss over that struggle. I would allow that to have its place, but that doesn't mean it is the thing in my life. There are other things to my life as well, which brings me joy. So I
Mm-hmm.
will then embrace these. And in my view, that's where possibly mindfulness and heartfulness possibly they come together.
Mm-hmm.
There is a dance happening between the
Mm-hmm.
different sides of us, and how
Mm-hmm.
tuned we are to that dance, where we are
Right.
not hitting
Right.
one aspect and the other, but really being in tune and not walling off in a way. So say, for example, not pushing thoughts away,
Right.
just being compassionate to myself. Yes, I'm having that thought, I accept that thought, and I then let it go. So I
Right.
remember, I don't remember the exact quote, but I recall that one Zen master once said that if a thought, an unwholesome thought comes to him, he will bring him in, but not offer him tea. And
Okay.
they have a way of these koans, right? So,
Right.
and it
Right.
has, and like a koan, it has stuck to me. They don't offer it
Right.
tea. Let that
Right.
visitor
Right.
come in. So
Wow.
possibly
Yeah.
that's where both the things come together, and that's where the dance of life is.
Right.
That's the way I see it.
Lovely. In fact, very, very interestingly, one of our friends, Pradeep, has made this comment, and I want to read it for everybody's, you know, uh, reference here. He says, "With love, these mind and heart differences can be bridged. Like someone said, and this is a quote: मिटा दिए हैं सभी फासले मोहब्बत ने मेरा दिमाग धड़कता है मेरे दिल की तरह." And I think that's a very beautiful way of looking at this resonance between what we call as mind and heart, that they dance and sing, that there's so much synergy between the two of them. um, thank you so much for weighing in on that, all of you. Komal Vyas from Gujarat, of course, very fundamental question. I think all of you have touched upon it, and we hope we'll be taking that further. So she says, if I'm angry or unhappy with someone, then how to control my emotions by not reacting to him or her, and how mindfulness will help me out. So I hope, Komal, that some of the examples, in fact, the various examples that Harini, Ananya, and Indira have given in the course of this discussion opens up some doors of possibility in terms of looking at that. It's a process, and I think, uh, if I may say so on behalf of the panel, uh, it's also practice and practice and practice. It is not something that happens overnight, perhaps. One needs to see it. But then, quickly, does anyone want to look at the question that Komal has asked? Control
Maybe
my
I'll take a
emotions.
pick. I'll
Yeah.
take a pick on that. I'll try
She
it.
talks about controlling my emotions. How does mindfulness help? I think that's the question. Yeah.
Yeah. I think possibly I would shift it by saying that we look at the emotion, then control it. That is a shift I see in
Mm-hmm.
terms of our thinking mind.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of a practice, Komal, I would say that whenever there is anger, and there is a lot of anger at that point in time, and the person is
Mm-hmm.
just there with you,
Mm-hmm.
the best way out is to recognize it, and as you keep practicing what we have just spoken about, getting back to our breath, you would recognize that you are angry. So there is a bit of a pause there, uh, when you have that stimuli, which is the anger here, and then how do you respond to it? So whether you fly off the handle or you just give a bit of a break. So the best way to go back to do that is to just go back to your breath. So the moment you see that you are angry, maybe over time you will see that you are able to actually catch anger as it arises in you. But initially it's not possible. Initially only when you are full blown or almost full blown you get to know that you are angry. Then
Right.
just go back to your breath and go back to your full breath. That is, breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out. So go back to your belly
Mm,
breathing, and if it is possible, leave the scene at that point in time without talking to that person, whoever it may be. Even if it is your teenage daughter, don't speak at that point. Just leave that scene if it is at all possible. If it is not possible, then what you can do is that you can just tell that person that I'll get back to you on whatever. Maybe, you might be also saying something which may have value, but it then creates a bit of a distance. For myself, I find it very useful to leave the scene, and as I have become a proponent of walking meditation here, I see, I just get back to some walking. I feel it takes away the sting of that anger. So it really helps me when I'm angry, just to go move out and to go back to my breathing, my belly breathing, and just to get into some kind of a walking. So then I'm able to kind of calm myself down, and then I take a call as to how I respond to that situation, whether it actually needs a response or no, whether I can let go of that situation or whether I need to respond. So all those kinds of things. So that might be a way out, Komal. You can give it a try. It's fun, I must say.
right. Lovely. Walk away if possible. Walk far away from it if possible, but don't bang the door, because I think somewhere the images that I get in my own mind from my own experience is about my children walking away and banging their doors on me. So, or probably I have done it too so many times. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, there is one more uh, question over here. In fact, Bharat Krishnan, who has of course been part of this, nice to see you, Bharat. He mentions two things. I mean, this is not a question. He talks about stillness in a storm, and I think that's what all of you have alluded to in various ways. And he also talks about a Sufi term called sama, which basically means listening to the music of your soul. And Begor also talks about samatyam, which we speak about several times. So just for all of us to uh, you know kind of come to one page on it. So if there is any other further, if there are further questions from friends who have tuned into this, we'll just give a little pause over here, wait for those questions to come. If there are no further questions, I would like to then end this broadcast for here. I mean, for now, um, with the announcement that we would continue with this exploration uh, on Saturdays, not necessarily every Saturday, because the next Saturday is Deepavali and festive season. Everybody will be mindful about Deepavali next Saturday. We will come back the Saturday after Deepavali, which is the 21st of November. And I hope that all of you will come back. We will come back with more and more interesting things about mindfulness, not only conversations, but probably more and more experiences that we can try and build into this virtual world that we are trying to create for ourselves. Okay, there's one comment from Priyanka Sethi. Agreed, Ananya, she says, but the feeling of anger, frustration might keep simmering inside, even if we distance ourselves from the situation for the moment. Is that the case? Very nice question.
Yes, yes, it's the case. It doesn't go off so easily. I mean,
You, yeah.
I'm not laughing at it, but what I'm trying to say that there are certain wounds in us which takes time to heal, and
Yeah,
a lot of our wounds are related to our anger, so it does take time to heal.
right.
It doesn't go away, but the moment we become aware of our anger, and in our practice we have a beautiful image that Thai gives. He says that when a small child is crying, a baby is crying, the first thing the mother does is to kind of rush in and hold that baby close to her chest. And then, she tries to soothe that baby, and then as the baby is soothed a bit, then she tries to find out whether the baby is hungry or the nappy change or so on and so forth. So
Hmm.
it's similar with anger, so if we are able to recognize anger and able to hold that anger, that okay, you are there and I know you are there, but I hold you, I embrace you. And as we keep doing that, I feel that it loses a bit of its, you know, steam
Pot-
over time.
Potency or whatever. Yeah, steam.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
I hope
Indira
Priyank.
wanted to say something, Giri.
Yeah,
Yes, Indira.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
want to step in here. In fact, I just wanted to give that example that Ananya was mentioning. So, which is, it's just that you keep a space between that anger. Firstly, you note it, but also you see that that anger is not you. So there is that space. You step away. At that time, probably you can't even see that it's not you. You're just so filled with it. But if you step away, it sort of simmers a little and comes down. And then you come back to it later and then pick up that anger and really befriend it and try to understand the cause of that anger. So that was one part which Ananya so beautifully described, and that's from Thai's example of really understanding why a baby is crying, why is it the nappy that is wet, does it have colic, etc., etc. The other thing is that when we have any emotion or thought, they say that the impact is barely for maybe 30 to 60 to 90 or even 120 seconds. Uh, but we do repeat it, and then that becomes a story, and it grows and grows. And that's what is also called the second arrow. So imagine if you have an arrow that's thrust into you, and in that same spot you repeat that arrow, then it really
Wow.
deepens the wound. So
That's a
if you can,
powerful image.
yes. So
Yeah.
if you try to not propagate those stories again, it's through practice. That might also be of some help. And then the
Mm,
story also changes, and you train yourself to see things as they are. So that anger itself, instead of anger, perhaps you replace it with other emotions. So
right.
I don't know whether that's of help, but maybe you can try that as well.
Lovely. Lovely. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Ananya and Indira, for that. And I think we should now conclude this broadcast. And as I said, to all my friends who have joined here uh, and
Maybe
who have
just
been
to close
participating.
this,
Yeah,
I want to just read out a few lines because I
of
think
course. Of course.
it
Yeah,
speaks to the questions that have arisen. And of course, cultivating that inner relationship is a long journey. And I know when we talk here, it sounds like, wow, we figured out this drill and now we're kind of
right,
doing it. And
right.
that's not the intention of anyone here. And it would, I would really say it takes some guidance to
Right.
cultivate this kind of a practice. What we are doing
Hmm.
here is really a conversation,
Yes.
sharing of our experiences. But anyone who is really interested in cultivating a good practice would need some guidance.
Mm,
It's
mm,
not something that we do without guidance
mm,
because, like Ananya said, we sometimes we can carry wounds that show up without our capacity to hold them when we practice mindfulness,
mm.
and we need a good teacher. And there are a lot of people in our country who provide that guidance. Um, so that's really what I would like to put here. And then there is a poem that I feel just sort of very beautifully ties what Ananya and Indira are saying together. So I just want to read it out,
Please.
if that's okay. So it's The Guest House by Jalaluddin Rumi, and it's translated by someone. And the poem goes, this being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. It's something that really uh, has stayed with me for many, many years. Because a lot of what we
Lovely.
struggle with is our own inner judgment for what we experience. And it's that judgment that we are really trying to soften in this process. Everything else is just going to happen the way it is. We can't change it. Yeah.
Wonderful,
So
wonderful, beautiful, Harini. Thank you so much for that. In
thank
fact, you can
you.
probably share that poem with all of us, and I can forward it to as many friends as possible. One last request from my side. Each one of you, in the course of your sharing, talked about a book or probably a few books. If you can kindly repeat the names of these books with the authors, maybe our friends would like to check them out. In fact, I would be very interested in exploring some of that. I know just reading a book is not going to be making me any more mindful, but then it will certainly put many of us on that path. So, starting with you, Indira, books
Um,
that we can probably refer to, at least one.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. Old Path, White Clouds by Thich Nhat Hanh is a really
Can you just
beautiful
spell Thich Nhat Hanh's name? Thichich Nhat
Nhathanh.
H. Okay,
Hanh.
okay.
And it's called
H.
Old Path. Old
White
Path,
cloud.
old as white clouds. It's a
Right.
beautiful
Old
book,
path,
really moving.
white clouds.
Yes,
Okay.
I really
So
love that book.
thank you very much for that. Harini, you talked about a book as well.
When Things Fall Apart by Pema
When
Chodron.
MISPEMA.
Yeah.
Right.
Chodron.
Okay, 1 minute. When things fall apart by CHODRON.
ON.
Okay,
ON.
Pema yeah, okay, Pema Chodron. When things fall apart. Ananya.
I spoke about actually this book, which is called Teachings on Love by Thich
Okay.
Nhat Hanh.
Okay.
So that's one. And if some of us who are watching and we are more interested to look into the neuroscience or practice it from that lens, I
Mm-hmm.
will suggest John Kabat-Zinn's The Full
Right.
Catastrophe Living. This is the
Wow.
book,
Okay.
The Full Catastrophe Living. So this is
Okay.
also a very beautiful book.
Right. Wonderful. Okay. Full catastrophe living. That in fact, wow,
And
that's
for
such a
Gargi,
potent
who is
title.
interested in the heartfulness bit, The Deep
Uh-huh.
Heart is a very beautiful book.
Okay.
It's all about mindfulness in a heartful way. Um, a very different approach, but really all the same thing. But
Can you just get
because
to the
and
title
I know
again? Repeat
Gargi,
the
so
title.
kind of.
Yeah.
It's called The Deep Heart,
The Deep Heart.
and the author is Dr. John, John
Mm-hmm.
Prendergast,
One minute.
Prendergast.
John Pen PREN. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Dergast.
Okay.
Gast.
Pendergast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much for all the sharing. I think there are a lot of messages coming in from our friends over here who, by all accounts, in fact, you guys have rocked to, use a very uh, to use a term that's in vogue. My children sometimes tell me that I rock, and that also brings me images of that mountain and that rock. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. It's been wonderful talking to you all. So much to work on, so much to perhaps think about, so much to explore. I'm really excited about moving this forward. Uh, Hope to see you all back again on November 21st, same time, same place. And a big thank you to all our friends who have joined in and who've participated, who've asked their questions in all earnestness, and who've remained in till this end. In fact, till the end of this conversation, we have 1 minute, 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 35 seconds. Thank you very much. Take care. Have a lovely Deepavali. Stay safe. Bye bye.
Thank you
Bye,
so much.
everyone. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye
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 bye.
bye.
Bye bye.